Kyle Porter is here. KP, the United States Ryder Cup team today went from 6 to 12. Hello, how are you?
Yeah, bring me your. I want to hear the JT hate. I want the JT tears. I want it all. Drop it in the comments. It's I can't wait to talk about it. It's going to be awesome.
All right. So this morning, it is Tuesday. This morning, Captain Zach Johnson announced and confirmed his captain's picks that were a little bit leaked recently. And then I think we knew as of Monday night what these picks were going to be, but they are now officially in. So joining the automatic qualifiers, the guys that earned their spots, which were Scotty Scheffler, Wyndham Clark, Brian Harmon, Patrick Cantlay, Max Homa, Xander Schauffele, Zach Johnson added 6 more names. Those names: Sam Burns, Ricky Fowler, Jordan Spieth, Brooks Koepka, Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas. Those will be the 12 that embark to Rome to try to win the Ryder Cup on European soil for the first time in 30 years. Patrick, we'll start with you. We'll go through each one of these guys, but your initial reactions to the squad that will be donning the red, white, and blue.
It was an A+ from Zach Johnson. I think this is the team you have to take to try to break that 30-year spell. It may not be the most talented players, but I think it is the best team. And for all those people out there on TV, on big radio, the corrupt golf media saying it's a boys' trip, they're the same people for the last 30 years who have been harping that this U.S. team needs to have that rah-rah European spirit. You know, they're playing for one another. And now that it's come, people are critical of it. So pick a side, pick a lane.
I cede all of my time to Patrick. Patrick, just keep going.
And so for Zach Johnson, I think he did what he had to do. I understand there are some people potentially in the comments, potentially some rumblings who may not agree with maybe those last 2 picks. But I think he hit it out of the park today and did what he needed to do for this U.S. team to be successful.
Kyle, would you say that this is on brand or off brand for a United States captain to assemble a team like this?
Off.
You do. This is
yes.
So this can both be boys club, boys trip, and off brand.
It can both. I don't think it's. Listen, like you want to be Europe. This is what Europe does, right? Go back to 2008. You know how many top 10s Ian Poulter had leading into the 2008 Ryder Cup? One top 10 in 2008. You know what he did at that Ryder Cup? He went 4-1-0 because now Europe got smoked, so it didn't matter. But this is what Europe does, honestly. And people get so riled up about it because it's JT and he's friends with Spieth. And like, did you hear Zach Johnson talk about Lucas Glover? I don't know their relationships. It seems like Zach Johnson is closer as a friend to Lucas Glover than to Justin Thomas. I don't know that. I'm just going off of like sort of what ZJ was saying and sort of conjecture there. But I'm with Patrick. Like I think the status quo of taking the 12th guy, the 13th guy, that just going down the list is so tired and it's what the U.S. has been doing. The U.S. has been acting like they are Alabama, coincidentally, and they can just roll a bunch of talent out there and win this event. And guess what? This is not stroke play at the Wyndham. It's the Ryder. It's barely the same sport. And I think that what they did today, it looks bad. I concede that it doesn't look great because it's JT. But I think what they did is actually took a lot of chutzpah from Zach Johnson to go out and pick somebody that is like people are still arguing like logically over, well, I mean, Lucas Glover's been a lot better player than JT. Yeah, no crap. Like nobody's arguing that JT's been good. That's the whole point. Like, he is not on the team because he's been good. He's on the team because he's the team captain. And that's what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks. And I think it took a lot of gumption to go for ZJ to do that. And he went out and did it. And I think it's going to pay off.
Greg, those were a couple of rave reviews from our other podcast mates here. Where do you fall on the spectrum of how you feel about these picks?
Well, a little more European. You might say one particular European nation, Switzerland. I'm a little more down the middle on this one.
Nice.
Couple reasons. One, I think you got every pick right, with the exception of possibly JT. I would not have put JT on the team. Now, I think the best play that he made was it seemed like Cam Young was slated on this team. You know, there's been a lot of conversation. I've heard a lot of people say, well, you could have picked this team in January. Or, what's the difference? What's the point of extending the captain selections? And I think if that were the case, Cam Young would have been on the team. And Sam Burns probably would have been off to maybe a question mark. Maybe if he started in April, Sam Burns probably would have been off. And I think putting Sam Burns on instead of Cam Young was a very good call. Now, when it comes to Justin Thomas, it's extremely risky. I saw your tweet, Kyle, about how a good pick is not dictated by the outcome, and I think that is true. But there's a lot of pressure on a pick when it's a bad pick, and this is a very risky pick to make. But it taught me something today that I probably should have known a long time ago, and that is not everybody starts this Ryder Cup point cycle at 0. And there are certain players like Jordan Spieth, like Justin Thomas, that every captain wants to have on their team. And because they want to have them on their team, the question is, who's going to knock them off the mountain and demand a spot? And this is what we've been talking about for the past couple of weeks. There was an opportunity for a Keegan Bradley, for a Lucas Glover, who gave himself an opportunity by playing so well, for a Tony Finau. These guys had an opportunity to demand a spot on this team, and they clearly didn't do enough. So, there's one way to look at it is who did get picked and what did they do to get on the team. But I think what Captain Zach Johnson was really looking at is, well, who was on my initial wish list and what was done to move them off of it. And I don't think we had enough to get JT off of this team, not based on his play, but based on the play of the others.
I agree with that. I agree that someone could have taken this spot from Justin Thomas, whether that be Denny McCarthy, Lucas Glover, Keegan Bradley, Tony Finau, a lot of those guys coming down the stretch. I think they could have taken it. Patrick, I want to throw this to you. I want to take something Kyle said and propose it to you. So Kyle, I believe, said something to the effect of, it took a lot of chutzpah for Zach Johnson to select Justin Thomas. I would argue it takes very little chutzpah, very little courage, very little to select a guy who is going to be on his whatever number of international team, a guy that's had great success, a guy that's been your stalwart. I think it would take more chutzpah to leave him at home.
You're both right, in my opinion, right? I mean, Zach Johnson's captaincy will come down to one name, and it's Justin Thomas. If he goes 3-0-0 and they win the Cup, it's obviously a great success. But if he goes 2-1, doesn't look great, he sits him a couple times, the internet's going to be running wild with, oh my goodness, Lucas Glover's hitting that approach to 5 feet and Justin Thomas just hit it into a pond 300 yards away in like Lake Como or something. And so I think you're both right, where it's easy for him to look at this situation and be like, okay, I could leave him at home, bring someone with a higher floor like a Keegan Bradley, or I could take JT, who has a much higher ceiling. And I think that's the way you kind of have to look at the Ryder Cup, is you're getting the ceiling out of this guy. So you're both right. But I mean, his captaincy is going to come down to Justin Thomas and if he can deliver.
Let's dive into it. Show the profile, Josh. Justin Thomas, 30 years old, 26th in the world ranking. This will be his third Ryder Cup appearance. He is 6-2-1 in previous Ryder Cups. That's 2-2 in foursomes, 2-0-1 in four ball, and 2-0 in singles. Obviously, failing to qualify for the FedEx Cup playoffs puts a target on Justin Thomas. He was certainly, I don't know if he was the last man in. I will probably never know that, but I think the way that it was argued and discussed over the last couple of weeks, this was the X Factor selection.
I don't know who's supposed to respond to this, but I'm jumping in. I thought it was actually interesting. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but during the Zoom, the ill-conceived Zoom call today, that spawned 1,000 memes, that they let JT go last, right? Like they gave him sort of the final word. Like they went to him last. I actually don't think he was the last guy on the team. I think Sam Burns probably was.
Yeah, it was probably alphabetical, right?
Yeah, it was alphabetical.
Well, no, I just mean like in terms of right. So they went through the Zoom call, I think alphabetically, but
did they?
I think
Yes.
so. Burns to
Okay.
Thomas.
Well, then I'm an
But
idiot.
No, but I think you're right, KP. I also think that Justin Thomas was always on this team
Yeah, and
from a selection.
again, like I don't know. He's not like if I have one more person send me something about Lucas Glover being on the team over Justin Thomas, then you also better be prepared to defend Russell Henley over Jordan Spieth.
Okay.
Or Keegan Bradley over Ricky Fowler, right? If we're just going strictly off of Data Golf, which I love, or off of Rick Run Good, then this is not the team. But it's not only Justin Thomas. It's other guys as well. And so I wrote about this today for CBSSports.com, and I've said it 100 times. Like, and we talked about it on Sunday night. Who's like the U.S. is going to be down by 3 at some point, and it's going to look like it's inevitable that Europe is winning. Who wants the ball? Who wants to go? Who wants to take on Rahm first out on Sunday? Who wants Rory first out on Sunday? You know, I think that's JT's role, and whether the U.S. just doesn't have that guy, and I think it's so important, almost especially in Europe. I think if this event was in the U.S., maybe argue against JT a little bit. Like I think you could take a Keegan or a Russell Henley in the U.S. and everything would be kind of fine. I think the fact that the event is in Europe actually matters here. And I think JT just plays such a specific role, and I know it fires people up. I mean, this has been the most polarizing thing other than maybe the PIF stuff all year. And it's he's only going to play in like 2-3 matches.
I actually think that we were kind of diving into this a little bit, Greg, before we went hot. So I agree that it's not as easy to compare Justin Thomas to Keegan Bradley, for example, or Justin Thomas to Lucas Glover or whatever. But Tony Finau needed a better PR team leading into this, right? I mean, they were only a handful of spots off each other in the Ryder Cup points. Tony Finau had a significantly better year. Tony Finau has good Ryder Cup history. Tony Finau, I think, is actually a better argument if you're going to take a guy who's established. I know their demeanors are a little bit different, but both very likable. I actually think that might be a conversation that should be happening that's not happening.
It's not happening. And again, in large part, this has to do with what Tony Finau did with his golf clubs. Again, I think this is a really big sticking point for me today. Not everybody starts at 0. So Tony Finau is a part of the team. You'd like them in 2018. You'd like him to be a part of the team. But the question is there a spot for him? And for Justin Thomas, there is a spot. You know, he's got a parking spot with his name on it because he's the captain of this team. And there's a difference between being a really solid role player and being the captain of the team. And it was clear with Zach Johnson's comments today that Justin Thomas is the captain and the leader of this team. And you know, the other thing too that I would add to that is this is it's a very risky pick for Zach Johnson. It's an opportunity for Justin Thomas to, you know, create his lead in future Ryder Cups and cement it even more, regardless of his play. I mean, he can basically make his name permanent on the Ryder Cup team until he decides not to play anymore. If he goes out and has a phenomenal week, because he all of a sudden turns into an Ian Poulter,
Right.
where he's been a great player and he's qualified for all the Ryder Cup teams he's played for, and he has been a big contributor and a big rah-rah guy. I'm not sure about his ping pong skills, but I'm sure they're pretty good. If he goes out in poor form and performs very well in the Ryder Cup, then he becomes a Ryder Cup legend, like an Ian Poulter, where the Ryder Cup brings out the best in his game. And it's hard to tell that right now because he's only played in 2 Ryder Cups. I know he's played in 3 President's Cups as well, but in all of those events, he's come in as one of the best players and he's played well there. It's not surprising. Where, Ian Poulter has been a captain's pick on 5 of the 7 Ryder Cup teams he's been a part of. And he steps up in the moment and he outperforms his normal. And this is the first time, in my opinion, Justin Thomas has an opportunity to do that. And I think it would put him, a great performance puts him in a separate class.
If
A poor performance, it looks really bad on Zach Johnson.
Okay, Kyle.
Real quick, there's a quote that that's a great point, Greg, by the way. But there's a quote from Luke Deep Fried Egg tweeted this. If you're not following Deep Fried Egg, you should be. But there's a quote from Luke Donald from 2018 in Paris. He said, "The Americans were amazingly strong on paper, but Ryder Cups are just different than individual championships. They're about team chemistry, team bonding, finding the right partnerships. And we obviously had a lot of help being at home on a course that we're familiar with." And I think that's a little bit. There you go. Wow, Josh, elite. It's a little bit being over. It's a little bit like the comp that I was thinking about is if you've got Draymond Green, like, would you trade him for, I won't get the right person that I'm looking for here, but would you trade him for Anthony Davis? In a vacuum, obviously Anthony Davis is better than Draymond Green, right? But there's something that Draymond Green does to your team that is Anthony Davis can't do. And I get that we're talking about very, very, very different sports, but the Ryder Cup is a very, very, very different thing than anything else that happens in golf. And I feel like people are just ignoring that. Like nobody is arguing that JT is playing good golf. Like I feel like people are coming at me like, prove that he's playing good golf. And it's like, I'm not trying to. Like I'm not even like attempting to do that. I'm just telling you, like, what he brings to the table is something that the U.S., as we talked about on Sunday night, Rick, as constructed, does not have, but actually needs when they're going to Europe to try to end this drought.
One thing on that, he brings it if he's performing well. It's really hard to bring the rah-rah when you're getting beat. You're getting beat badly. So the performance is linked to the. You're not going to be shushing the crowd when you miss a 5-foot putt, right? That doesn't happen. There's no celebrations. The energy is sucked out of everybody. So the performance is a really important aspect to bring that out.
If you think Twitter is spicy now, imagine if Justin Thomas misses the cut at the Fortinet in 2 weeks.
Imagine if he gets beat in the first match, like 7-6.
To be fair, you know who also missed the cut at the Fortinet Championship?
Who's that?
John Rahm.
John Rahm. I've heard of him.
Straits. Yep.